7:25, which is the time that we said we would do the public hearing. So what I'd ask is if you would all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance so that we can start this in an appropriate way. Pledge my allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, we do have a quorum. Can you please proceed and read the notice?
Notice is hereby given that there has been introduced before the town board of the town of Wallkill, New York, a local law entitled term limits. Please take further notice that public hearing be held in the town board of the town of Wallkill on April 30th, 2026 at 7:25 p.m. Wallkill Town Hall, 99 Tower Drive, Middletown, New York, to consider the adoption of the enforcement introductory local law. Any resident of the town of Wallkill is entitled to be heard upon said introductory local law at such public hearing. Copies are available for review at townofwallkill.com, and hard copies are available at Wallkill Town Hall, 99 Tower Drive, Building A. Town of Wallkill make every effort to ensure the hearing is accessible to persons with disabilities. Anyone requiring special assistance and or reasonable accommodations should contact the town clerk, or the town board of the town of Wallkill, Louisa Gracia, town clerk.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. All right, so for point of perspective here, one of the things that I thought was rather important when I ran was that there was almost no turnover on the dais, and that in part some portions, if not all of the portions of the financial issues at the town were because of longevity and complacency. To that end, I campaigned on the notion that perhaps the dais should experience term limits. As we have seen, that term limits are a point of concern both on the state and federal level, and since we really don't have the wherewithal to negotiate the state and federal conversation, we can start it and do our best practices here at the local level. So I pushed forward and asked the town attorney to draw up what would be the beginnings of a conversation about term limits here for local elected officials specific to the dais only. So that would be to councilman and supervisor positions. That is the genesis of this law and the genesis of this discussion. So we are now in the public hearing portion of this, where we are bringing this to the public specifically to hear your feedback, input, and thoughts on the matter. With that, I would like to open the floor at this point in time. Before we get to the councilman, we'll talk to them at the end of this evening. I suspect we'll likely leave this discussion open. At this time, I'd like to invite anyone who would like to speak on this matter to come to the podium. Please state your name and your address, and then your position. If you can keep it to 3 minutes, that would be great, but I think that that's not necessary at this point since there aren't a whole lot of people. We don't have to worry.
So Judy Mellenbacher, 15 Martin Lane, and I am all for term limits. Nothing against anybody's job or what's going on, but individuals think differently. And the more variety we have in that, the more people that are going to be serviced by our community. And I just think it's real important. When I was looking last night, all of you guys, you're doing a great job. It's not a job thing, but you are all past primary school age. It's something that, I mean, you don't have children in that age group. There are probably many things that you don't even consider in your daily life that a mother of 4 under the age of 5 is thinking about. When we talk about the differences, you know, from this school has this property, wouldn't it be great to put a playground between those two areas? Between Minnesink and Wallkill, so that our community can know each other. And I have no complaints. I would like to see a bigger variety of opinions, a nice changeover, make it long enough so this so that jobs can get done. And I would also like to see, once November elections hit, if there are new electees, have them come in and sit so that they're not starting in January, not knowing what's going on. I really feel like variety is what we need. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Jude Ward, 54 Fairlawn Ave. I'm not a big fan of term limits, but I understand the reason behind it. And even though I like to have the voters to have their choice, I realize that having incumbents does, prevent others from stepping up and stuff. So I'm okay with it and stuff, but I just want to kind of go through some of the things like for the current board. Like somebody coming in, they're going to serve 4 years, and then they can serve another 4 for a total of 8. That's how it's set up. But like the current council, like let's start with Councilman Johnson. He's already served more than 8 years, so he's not going for re-election. He cannot be a councilman going forward. He can still go for supervisor or other positions and stuff. Now, for Councilman Vanilla, he served, this is his 3rd year, get re-elected in November, he'll serve 7. Could he run again then? Based on the
current language, no, he could run and he could win, but he could only serve 1 year of that term.
okay.
Yeah, so he would have to step down midterm. As it's written right now, there's nothing, this is a starting point, so this is just the beginnings of a conversation. It may be that, 4 years isn't a good term length. It may be that term limits isn't a good idea at all. It may be that the sky is the limit. This is the very beginning and genesis of the conversation.
So my point is, well, say somebody's serving for 4 years. If they step down after 1, that counts as 4 years for them, right? But what does it count for the person that takes their place then? So if you look at the 22nd Amendment, if a president steps down and the vice president takes over and it's like less than 2 years left of the term, that doesn't count. He can actually get elected twice more. But if the president stepped down after 1 year and the vice president took over and for 3 years, he can only go for, re-election once then. We want to kind of think of through to make sure we cover those scenarios and stuff. We had an odd thing with this year being an election for just one year for the term. What'll happen if the state decides to reverse it back and they say they want another 1 year term or a 3 year? How is that going to affect things too? So just kind of think of how that would, work out and stuff. So, but besides that, I'm okay with term limits. But thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm John Ward, live in Scotchtown. I was town councilman for 6 years and town supervisor for 10. So according to this law, I'm not eligible to run if I was stupid enough to want to run for the board again. But that option eliminates me from the opportunity if I wanted to serve, because I've already served 16 years on the council. And the fact I'm against, don't know how I think about term limits on the federal and state level. I'm not sure about that. But on the local level, I don't think it's necessary at all, because everybody on this board serves 2 years. That's it. You get elected for 2 years. And that's your term limit, because you're running all the time with a 2-year term. You can't just say, oh, well, I'll wait 3 years before I have to run and get into the politics of everything. Every year, every day, you're running for the next election if you want to run. And the worst thing that could happen to this town, excuse me, is with the term limits, the way it's written now, currently, the entire board could be vacated at one time. If a person gets elected to this election, they could serve only 8 years straight. If this board got wiped out in this election and 5 people came in again, they could only serve 8 years total. And that would say the whole board is gone. what chaos that would bring to the town of Wallkill. One thing I tried to do while I was elected official was change the terms. So they would go, half the board would go 2 years, and another half would go the other year. Most municipalities have that. And the town clerk and the supervisor would run on the alternate with the other two council at every time. Excuse me. Each time. I think that's the best term limits you can have in a local municipality. Because everybody knows everybody. You represent the first ward, you represent the second, you the third. And the supervisor is like the member at large. Right? Okay, you still just one vote as supervisor, as this councilman in the first ward, or third ward, or fourth ward, or second ward. So you still are the same. So I think the 2-year terms, which when I was supervisor, I wanted 4, make it easier, but I was convinced that the best thing to do is do your job and you get reelected when you want to, if you wish to run. That's the best way to keep term limits, is do your job. And the problem with, like at the federal levels and the state level, we always reelect the same people. We don't get new people to come out and run against the incumbents. That's why there's a problem at the state level and the national level. Because nobody wants to run. And you'll have the same problem in the town. You don't get people coming out wanting to run for office. And when they get in, they realize it wasn't what I thought it was. I want to get out. I mean, it's a different story when you're in the office than when you're thinking from the outside. It's a lot of work that goes in. And the 2-year terms are tough. It would be good to have, but rotating so the council doesn't change at one time. Because that could happen even now. We're like you guys could all get defeated in the next election and a whole new town board would come in. Okay, I was first fortunate that I had 6 years experience as a councilman when I became supervisor. But I had a gap of 2 years in between, which gave me a better perspective of what was going on too. Okay, but that's my point. I don't think term limits at a local level would do any good for the town. I think it'd do more damage to the town. Because you just can't afford the possibility of everybody getting not locked out of beaten in an election or in 8 years have to leave. I think that would be a big problem.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yes,
How often when you ran did you have an opponent?
all but 2 years, 2 terms.
All but 2 times. Okay.
Yeah, my last 2 terms as supervisor, I did not have an opponent. But that doesn't stop you from running.
No, not at all. And
I mean,
you still have to do all of the heavy lifting that a campaign would entail.
And
But I was just curious.
my last 2
Yeah.
years, I wasn't intending to run. I was intending to, I had a heart attack in September. The election was in November. And nobody was running against me, so I said, what the heck?
Right. Right.
But that's why I was gonna get out after my heart attack, but I didn't. Because nobody was running against me.
Right.
If somebody was running against me, I probably would not have run the last 2 years.
John, who were your opponents those years?
First time I ran was Bill Cummings.
Yeah,
Second time I ran, it was the young lady, Louise, you remember? Who was fourth ward? Who was the woman who ran?
Nina?
Nina.
I didn't know that, okay.
Yeah, third year was
Green,
ex-cop.
the guy that ran on our ticket,
Yeah,
he was
he,
a Republican, but he ran on the Democratic line.
I don't know, it was a cop, he was a
Yeah,
cop.
yeah.
In the last 2 years,
Okay,
Mr. Ross?
well,
You ever run
I always had somebody, except the last term,
Right,
I didn't have anybody, but. And that probably meant because I was doing a good job in the first 3 terms. Decent enough that people wanted to reelect me,
sure.
okay? So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That was very informative. Anyone else? Yes, absolutely.
Adrian Vavrika. I wasn't gonna say anything, but I wanted to piggyback on what Mr. Ward said. I have mixed feelings about term limits at the state and national level, but at the local level, I don't really think the same things apply. And the biggest thing would be the turnover. If you didn't stagger the seats, you would have the whole board possibly going out at once. And like it or not, Wallkill has a history of developers coming in and, I'm sorry, but taking advantage sometimes of the town. And I could see a situation where you have the whole board gone, they're inexperienced people that are coming on the board. And then all of a sudden you got these developers that maybe have been before the town several times before, coming back. And somehow people that are inexperienced with developing or with dealing with these situations, not knowing what to do. So if you're gonna do it, you definitely have to stagger it. The other thing is, I would say that there's been a lot of confusion about the notification on this public hearing. I mean, it was supposed to be last week, then it was supposed to be last night, then it was supposed to be tonight. And I would say, whatever you're gonna do, you really have to give proper notice. And I'm assuming that it would go to a referendum if the board decides such.
Oh, yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think that's legally required.
And the other thing is, at the local level, I was chairman in the town of Wallkill for almost 16 years. It's really hard to find people just to run for local office, and I think we all know that. In fact, Mr. Vanilla, I think you're running unopposed
Correct.
for the
Twice.
second time. People just don't want to do it. Now, I don't really think it's because of the fact that they're running against an incumbent. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that it is only 2 years. They're not going to give up a job that they have. Maybe they don't know what it's all about. So I think, you know, it may be you come into the situation, we're going to have more and more trouble finding people just to run. So I would think very carefully before you do something like this at the local level, because I really don't think it's the same as where you have a senator or a governor or something like that. I think at the local level, it's just people wanting to come out. It's not your main job. If you're a councilman, supervisor is different. But if you're a councilman, you have another job or whatever, you want to give back to your community. But a lot of people aren't going to want to put in the effort if they know they have to go and they can't do it for very long. And there's too many question marks, and you're adding more question marks to the equation. So I would think very carefully before you do anything. And the best term limit is your electorate. If you don't do a good job, you should be voted out. I think it's their right to have that choice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Forgot to say a couple of things. I gotta remember what I was thinking when I was sitting down. Good. I served 10 years as supervisor. I don't know if anybody else ever served 10 years as supervisor in town of Wallkill, other than me. There may have been people way back before I moved up when the town was first founded, and there was some people, but I don't think there was a person who served 10 years. And I personally made a comment to a number of people when I got elected, I was gonna serve 10 years and that was it. And my medical condition forced me to make the decision, but at 10 years I left. Okay, and I was very happy to leave. Missed the politics, but then after I was out of it a while, I didn't miss the politics anymore, you know? But that's what I wanted to say about term limit. There's not many people. There's a few I can think of. Eric Valentin served 24 years, 25 years. I don't know how he got 25 out of it, but it's 24 because it's 2-year terms. But he served a lot of time.
Yeah.
I served 10. Tom Nosworthy, he served quite a bit as councilman and supervisor over the years. I don't know if anybody, Louisa, do you know anybody who served longer?
Howard,
No, Howard didn't serve that long.
but he was councilman for a while.
He was councilman, but then he was supervisor for only year, 2.5 years. Yeah, 4.5, not 4 years, 3.5 years. When the position opened in the assembly, I think he left midterm. And that's when Tom Nosworthy took over, and I think he went 3 or 4 years, I'm not sure exactly how many years he went, but there's not a lot of people that stayed around even the 8 years. Just for the type of work you have to do, it's a lot to give up. I know as supervisor, it's a full-time job and it's very hard to do a job and give up a job
2 years.
when you're young and have to become supervisor and give up your job and hope to get elected. And then even if you do it for 2 years, you could lose. You could be the greatest person in the world and in 2 years lose for whatever the reason. So it's a tough position, and after you get into it, sometimes you don't realize what it's like. Ask Eric Valentine what he thought about the supervisor job sometime, when he had to fill it for 6 months because of, what was it, illness or? No,
Dan Depew stuff.
Dan Depew left, that's right, he had to finish the term up. It's a totally different job than you think when you get into it, than people think it is outside. So there's a lot about it, but term limits, I think, is the best thing. Maybe at the federal level and the state level, but again, we don't vote, change the people. People have been around forever. If you look at the Assembly, or the House of Representatives and the Senators, they know today they're gonna be elected for another 2 years or 6 years. They know it, they don't even have to campaign. It doesn't mean anything to them. Because the people don't vote them out because they're not doing the job. That's the problem, not term limits. Thank you. Again.
Thank you very much. I just, yeah,
We just have someone with comment. Katie will read them at the podium.
excellent, okay.
This is on behalf of Navette Ray Merriman. Good evening, everyone. I stand here today opposed to imposing term limits in the town of Wallkill. While the idea may sound appealing at first, we have to ask ourselves, what problem are we really trying to solve? Term limits can make sense at the state and federal level where government is bigger, more complex, and often far removed from the people. In those systems, it's easier for power to become out of touch with the people they serve, and harder for everyday residents to have direct access or influence. For that, term limits can act as a safeguard, but local governments, like the town of Wallkill, are different. Here, officials are your neighbors. They're accessible, you see them in your community, you talk to them, and you can hold them accountable directly. The kind of connection, sorry, I had to take pictures of the comments. The type of connection here in the town of Wallkill is different. Here, term limits don't guarantee better leadership. What they do guarantee is the loss of proven public servants who understand our community, our history, and the challenges we face. In local government especially, that matters. Relationships matter. Knowing how to get things done matters. We also need to be honest about something. What happens when someone runs unopposed? Like, for instance, what's happening in Ward 3. How do term limits fix that? They don't, if anything. If anything, they can make the problem worse. If fewer people are stepping up to run now, forcing out experienced leaders won't suddenly create new candidates. It could leave us with empty seats or people unprepared to take on responsibility. The real issue isn't how long someone serves, it's whether people are willing to step up and serve at all. And right now, across many communities, there's a shortage of people who want to run. Term limits don't solve that problem. They highlight it. Most importantly, we already have term limits. They are called elections. Mr. Jones, the voters of Wallkill have the power to decide who represents them. Term limits take that choice away from the voters and replace it with an automatic cutoff, regardless of performance, dedication, or results. That's not empowering the public, that's restricting.
All right, thank you very much. Any further comments?
No.
Okay, thank you. I have a quick couple of questions. The first of which is, if we weren't talking about limiting the number of terms, but we were to talk about the adjustment of the length of terms, which you mentioned, And I think, Adrian, you mentioned that as well, that 2 years seems short, but maybe more time might be better. Would that change your opinion at all?
It really wouldn't for local elections.
Yeah.
But I think that the part I said about finding people to run
Mm-hmm.
would make it harder, because for 2 years, are you gonna give up, like for supervisor, for 2 years, a chance at 2 years? Are you gonna give up a job to be supervisor?
I can say
No.
specifically no.
Right, so for that thing, I think it does make a difference.
Okay, I just,
And also, you
Yeah.
can't learn enough in 2 years to really, as longer you're in, more knowledge you get, the more
Well, what I'm trying
understand
to say is,
things and you can
if
get
you-
it
if you-
done.
like he was saying, if your whole board got wiped out, you all, like some of you.
but that's possible now.
Right.
Oh,
it
yeah, it is.
possible,
But
You're
that's,
making,
right, but you're.
you're
making
saying
it
in 8 years it's gonna happen.
well,
gonna
no,
happen.
not necessarily,
This is open for discussion.
not
No,
necessarily.
I'm
I'm not,
saying the way the law is right now, I'm saying.
sure,
in 8 years,
I appreciate that, but,
If you
but,
got wiped out this election.
What about in
people would-
November?
5 people would get elected.
yeah,
What
yeah.
about this
But
November?
only served 7 years,
I
7 years.
understand, Mr. Ward.
We have some experience, so somebody that's new on the board, you're in a learning process for a while.
I couldn't agree with both of you more. The only reason that I can do what I can do right now is because I've been here before.
Yeah.
So that is true. And I do think that you certainly as a freshman, that you spend at least the first year and a half just figuring out how to get your sea legs. One of the things that was brought up to me during this conversation and the development of this conversation was, and I think it might have been you who brought this up, said that, there used to be this idea of civics within the community where you'd start out on a council, say the planning board or the zoning board, or you'd sit on a board, so you'd learn that process and you'd come up the ranks. I will also agree specifically with you, Adrian, about cultivating, the responsibility then is severely with the committees to cultivate new talent, 100%. But what I keep hearing you guys say, and I hope that maybe I'm hearing it correctly, is, well, the 2 years is fine because there's rotation, but it would be better if it were 4 years, as long as it were staggered. Then that would be better, but we don't want term limits in general, so no cap, just maybe a little bit longer and maybe staggered. Is that a fair representation?
I'm not in favor of term limits,
No,
but if you had to do it, you would definitely have to, if you decided to do it, you would definitely have to stay.
Got it, okay,
Definitely.
all right.
but I don't think.
I think
staggered's on the-
staggered now.
Some towns, they have the councilman are 2 years and the supervisor is 4.
Yeah,
Yeah, I looked at that too.
but the problem with 4 years is the person is not doing things to make themselves get reelected for 2 years or 3 years of that time. Where the 2-year term.
I don't know, I think Steve
Hang on.
Newhouse might
You're out.
actually disagree with you on that.
People who elected
Yeah.
you.
Yeah,
No,
but
you could-
hear that out. I know what you're saying, John, because I've thought about this,
But no, speak your mind. This is
Well, I
open
got a whole
forum.
thing
This is
here,
talk,
but
talk.
but I just want to jump in on John's statement there because I've thought about this so many times, right? Well, I'm a political nerd like the rest of you, right? And you see these people in Congress and whatnot and how they become wealthy and blah, blah, blah. And, they're making 170 grand, right? I mean, come on, you go in there, you're worth 30 grand, you come out 30 million. It's how, right? In any event. But the whole 2-year thing, I don't like it because every 2 years I gotta, and my summer is shot, my fall is shot, right? You gotta run your campaign, this and that, right? But at the same time, I gotta knock on those doors and say, this is what I've done these last 2 years for you, for the residents,
Yeah,
right?
which it should be.
So right, exactly, John, right? Now, if you're 4 years, I don't know. I think human nature, you wouldn't be as, for a couple of years. And then maybe you shift it into second gear and,
No, you make a very valid point,
You know-
Mark, and I'm gonna tell you right now, I actually like knocking on the doors. That's a
Absolutely.
weird thing about me.
But again, you want to get reelected, right?
Yeah.
Well, you had better knock on that door and say, this is what I've been doing for you on your behalf. You know what I mean? I represent you, and this is what I've been doing. I always say we because it's we, it's never an I. But, this is what we've been doing. I really appreciate your vote again, your support. And that's why it almost has to be 2 years, right? I just,
2 years is the best way to,
yeah,
the best way to
unfortunately,
put term limits on them.
well, I don't like term limits either, but
People when they look at the national, I'm sorry if I'm interrupting, but if they look at the national and the state level, the biggest first thing you said was their big fat salaries are getting rich off. What councilman is getting rich off a councilman's salary? You all have other jobs, unless you're retired or whatever. You all have another job. You can't live on the councilman's salary. So people, it's a popular thing to say term limits, nationally or state level. But it doesn't really apply to what goes on at a local level because your salary, I remember a few years ago when it was like, what, $11,000 a year? You're obviously not living on that. You're not getting rich on it. So it's not, the biggest gripe about term limits is that. And it's like what people want. They think you're getting rich off it. Well, you're not getting rich off a councilman's salary. Come on.
no,
And
I
the-
mean, let's be realistic here.
no,
And if it is every 2 years, you are beholden to the electorate.
yeah, man.
And the other thing is,
Somewhat.
with,
Something,
as a
yes.
town board, people know who you are.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
walk in the streets, they know you. They know if you're a councilman. They still think I'm supervisor 14 years after I left office. I still get questions about it. And I tell them, my answer is you probably know
That's
more
because
about what's going on. in
I'm
the town than I
directing
do.
them to you, former Supervisor Ward.
No,
I was just kidding.
I'm just saying, people know you from what you've done. You walk into Hannaford's or Price Chopper and people still think you're think I'm the supervisor and they ask me questions.
So let me ask a question then too. Then how do you solve complacency?
Well, you're always gonna have that. You have certain people are gonna always be complacent. But if you.
Not complacency,
You
not
gotta
complacency
elect-
necessarily in the electorate.
have
Not,
the
not,
same problem. And I hate to bring this name up, but Ben Gilman got elected every single time. Because people knew him.
That was a national thing.
But I'm saying, it's a 2-year term, but he gets elected every time. He
and
doesn't have to go out-
2/3 of that time, Ms. Ward, that was unopposed.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
that was
I'm saying-
Yeah, yeah.
money, power, and it was a national race. It's
Right.
not the same as a local race.
Just,
But
I
I'm
just,
saying the people.
I see,
you
I
don't
do
like
see
your
some
councilman.
parallels and
You
I,
don't like your House of Representative, you don't like your senator, vote against them. But people don't do it.
well, you have to have
They're-
somebody,
they're-
you have to have
just
somebody
take it
to
for
vote
granted
against.
it's good- He or she's gonna get reelected.
Yeah, I understand your points. I think that you have valid points here. I've heard a couple things that have actually really interested me. I think perhaps there might be some more fleshing out in this staggering idea. That's certainly something that is within reach. I don't know whether or not, I don't know if I agree with whether or not term limits right now is a thing that is necessary, in terms of a cap for the amount of time that you can serve. I have heard from both of you that, if there is an adjustment on the time that perhaps from 2 to 4 years for the supervisor position might be worthwhile. I don't know that I agree with that, although I can see the value in having someone who's got institutional knowledge. That certainly, again, I'm sitting here now doing what I can do now because I did it before. So I recognize that. But I think you brought up some very interesting points. And like I said at the very beginning of this, and I don't know if we have any other, we'll leave this open, because I think this is a part of a longer, bigger conversation. but I wanted to start the conversation because one of the things I think that is really important, regardless of how you feel about this discussion, is that there needs to be more engagement from a civics level by the public. And I think that part of the reason why the town is in its fiscal situation is because there's been disengagement by the public. And I think that if there's a mechanism to help the public understand its civic duty, so that errors in finances or accountability is something that we can hold our elected officials to, then we should do that. And if I can be instrumental in that, then I'd like to try to do that. So,
That's the angle that drew me to this, and appreciate Mr. Ward's service, and I think that you have presented what I know of you, a very humble person. And remember and appreciate your coming to me in church and congratulating me after mass on this win, and with a subtle warning as well. But by the same token, some of this may be moved through redistricting, and the bottom line is the reality of politics and what the perceived and effective ward delineations are in town of Wallkill. So want what you want, the electorate's going to decide. I was in support of a candidate who had decades on this board. So much so that my canvassing for him meant he didn't have to canvass, and had not seen voters for years and years and years. So much so that people thought I was the candidate, and they said, well, you're the only one that I see. I think that that's abuse. So if you don't have term limit whereby somebody has to move it, then you have an issue of complacency. And you brought up a very powerful word, and it's kind of scary word, chaos. What I walked into as a first timer seeing this financial mess is as much chaos as I need. So I don't think short term solved it. And I very much appreciate everybody coming out to speak your mind and open the discussion. I think staggering the term is something significant. And my number one driving force was abuse and complacency. So if from the political spectrum, we can find people who are motivated to participate, and we can see talent in our committees and boards, whether they're the zoning board, the planning board, elsewhere, school boards, for folks who show genuine heart and caring with an idea of solutions, these are the folks that we should promote to replace us. And the best leaders train their replacements.
Can I say one more thing? I'll say that before you. Years ago, when Howard Knowles was supervisor, you remember this. We used to have packed town board meetings. It was like the entertainment, and Louisa knows this too.
Seinfeld off the air, remember?
It was like people came in here, there were certain people that would come out and talk. And people would watch it on TV, on cable, rather than watch regular TV. It was that good.
Yeah.
And the only two times that I ever remember this room being packed was when Mr. Cummings tried to put a garbage thing on your tax bill, and anything about the racetrack, and people will come out. What I am fearful of, so you guys, you have a big decision to make on this term limits is, let's face it, it's a popular thing. Social media, term limits, get them out. Talking about Congress, the Senate, the president, whatever. I still don't think a lot of it applies to the local level. So I would say, be very careful and make sure you know what your goal is if you want to do it. Because if you put a referendum on the ballot, it's a popular thing. People are going to say, term limits, not really realizing how it might affect them locally. So I'm just saying, be really cautious how you proceed, which it seems like you're doing. You're thinking it out. That's all.
Thank you very much.
One
Yeah,
thing I
Yeah.
can say, not, it has to do with term limits too, but it doesn't. One of the things is the identity in the town of Wallkill. You have people right now who Middletown led, 3 weeks ago, did a bulk pickup. There are people in Scotchtown that I know of who put their stuff out, and it's gonna be out there for almost 2 months. Sitting on the curb, because they don't know where they live in the town of Wallkill, because the mailing address is Middletown. One thing you could look at, that's something I brought up in conversation all my years on the board. We should literally change the name of the town of Wallkill to the town of Wallkill officially. Like Cornwall on the Hudson. Make it town of Wallkill. We'll get our own post office out of that. And we can get some identity, and people know where they live. People don't know where they live. They think because the mailing address says Middletown, this is the Middletown problem. It's not, it's a town of Wallkill problem. Because people don't realize they live in the town of Wallkill. They think they live in Middletown.
Right.
If you tell somebody who's out of this area, where do you live? You don't say the town of Wallkill, you say Middletown.
Well, you start off saying.
It's the identity.
And they're like, where? And then you say Middletown.
Right.
I agree with you.
It's a big problem. That's part of the problem. You can't get people to be involved more because they don't know where they live. Really, they just live in or up here.
Need to do anything that,
Everything said here tonight is gotta be weighed and measured. The one thing I'd like to say is the town board may propose things, but the people that really run the town are the professionals that are working here all the time. To do that 40 hours a week here, because without them, this town doesn't move. Nothing happens. So if there is a chance, if this passes and there is a wipeout of the board, as people have mentioned here, that actually happens. I think with enough hindsight that the people that would get elected and the people that have been here as the professionals in this building would help explain what goes on. That's why you have a zoning board. That's why you have, all the other boards that we have here. It's because it brings the community together in a different way. And those are not elected positions. So yes, I see the idea of staggering might be very important, especially for a supervisor. I do think 8 years might be too short. I think maybe we should be looking at 10 or more. But at the end of the day, the professionals that are left here day to day are the ones that run the town. So that's what I think has to be thought of.
Mr. Coyne?
Yes. Okay, so. Term limits in Congress, love it. State level, love it. Right? I brought up the whole, vaguely insider trading. Who wouldn't want to get rid of somebody who's been sitting there for, close to 50 years in Congress? I said it at the first time we brought up this conversation, that those people should be forced to live in the same world that they've created for the rest of us, right? That being said, we're talking about town level, and John brought it up as far as how people don't run for office, and I had to adjust my numbers because I was off on yours, John. I didn't think you had opponents those 3 years. In any event, you're looking at, in the last 26 years, 25% of the elections were opposed. 75% were not. If you take out, and I was using my own because I've had 5 opponents out of the 6 terms, right? That knocks it down to 17%. Take out the times where it's an open seat, it knocks it down another percent. You're down to 16%. 16%. Look at the room right now, guys.
Yeah.
You've got a former supervisor, involved in the town for how many years, John, right?
60.
Former chair, a candidate, a chair, and a candidate's sister. Where's
Well,
the public?
There was somebody on.
Where's the public? I'm sorry, one other person. Right. That's my point, guys. People are not knocking down the door to serve. There was more people that.
That is
Now-
true.
Yeah.
Now, John,
True.
John, you know,
The
like,
Roosters had a bigger draw.
Proof that Mr. Coyne knows his business.
no, I had said, and you brought it up, how, you know, I said that the days of, you know, of being involved in the town and then therefore kind of getting the tap on the shoulder, like, hey, man, you know, you've been doing all this for the town. It's time for you to run for office. Those days are over, right?
Yeah, I think you're right.
John, when I started coaching Little League, right? You were involved with umpiring, you were the supervisor here, right? I got on the Little League board, served it. I was coaching 3 teams, didn't have kids. I was contributing to the community. Get on the planning board, senior housing board, senior housing board, you know, and then on to the town board. But, you know, nowadays, and the only reason why the reason I wanted to bring this up about the Little League, the only reason why I was even allowed to coach Little League without having kids is because nobody wanted to coach. And I remember being asked, and I was like, I was excited. I love baseball. I love Little League. You know, it's cool to me. And I was excited. I was like, yeah, cool, you know? And I was like, wait a minute. I said, go back and ask all the dads on the team, because I'm not going to take that away from a dad, you know, just because I happen to be friends and neighbors with the coach, right? He came back a few days later. He's like, yeah, no, nobody wants to coach. And look at our fire departments, how many their volunteers are down. It's all through society. And again, I look at the room and it's all us political nerds. Here we are, hoping that somebody is going to want to run for office.
Yeah.
Right? It's insane. But, you know, went through the numbers, you know, and that's with every small town. It's all the same. Town of Wallkill is no different. You know, we have a limited amount of people who want to serve. Term limits will only, you know, remove the knowledge. Knowledge about the developers, the zoning, the planning, the water system, the roads, the bridges. You know, we talk about getting comfortable your first year. You don't know all that. You don't know all that.
Definitely don't.
That comes with 6 years, 8 years, 10 years. That comes, you know, the longer you're here, you know, which leads me to who would be steering the town. If you have too many rookies, you know, the town administrators, the attorneys, the department heads, and outside consultants, that's who's going to run your town. None of them elected. 99% of them don't live in town. But yeah, let's let that person, you know, I mean, and I'm sure they're fine people and everything like that, but you know, we live here. We have a vested interest in what goes on. Now, you guys bring up the financial issues, and we can have that conversation, and there's a lot of moving parts as to why we're so far behind. And, you know, how many people were in that department, how many people left that department. We can talk about that and how people came, we hired people and people left and this and that. Fine, you know, but really you're ripping your nose off to spite your face is what you're doing. You're gonna remove the opportunity, and there'll be somebody who comes here next year, 5 years, 10 years from now, is very well liked, knowledgeable, wants to serve, and he's gonna be told, or she, your time's up. Have a good one, you know? And like I said at the last meeting, what's gonna happen, you're gonna have your open seat, and the Republicans are gonna go, well, hell, we can't have that. We gotta have that seat filled. We gotta find somebody. Hey, Jim, do you wanna run? And he's gonna be like, oh, what the hell, I don't wanna run you. Don't worry about it, don't worry. We'll walk you through it. It'll be nothing. Democrats are gonna go, well, the hell with that. I'm not gonna let that seat, right? And they're gonna put up their Jim. And you're gonna have somebody there, doesn't know what he's doing, doesn't want to be there, could care less. I don't want to say could care less, but you know, he's not there for the right reasons. That person doesn't go in with, hey man, I really want to accomplish this and this in my first term, you know, hopefully, you know, if I get that done, I get reelected, you know. And you know, the other thing is the biggest part of this job are phone calls, right? Helping people through their issues that they have with the town. You know, sometimes you can't, sometimes you can't. It's a civil matter. It's not a town matter, you know, but you try. Okay. And if you don't have that in you, you know, you're worthless, man. You're worthless. If you can't have experience the helper's high and get high off that, I don't want you up here. I don't want you up here, you know? But, and I know I'm sitting up here and I've been here for 10.5 years, but I'm not running for reelection this year. So I'm not speaking as trying to cover my own, right? Trying to cover my butt. Oh, no, this is crazy. I'm not gonna be, because I gotta be honest with you. I got 3 years left at Orange Rockland, 3.5, but who's counting? I don't want to, if I were to run for office again, it would not be for this seat. It would be for that seat. So this is okay with me. You know what I mean? That doesn't affect me. But what it does affect is the future of the town. And, you know, it seems like there's animosity toward, you know, 3 or 4 people that you guys don't want coming back. You know, again, you're gonna rip your nose off to spite your face. None of us are coming back for councilman. I can't speak for the others as far as whether they would want to do that job, but I can for myself, and I'm not gonna run for councilman again. You know, on the other hand, I think I've been a good councilman. You don't agree with a few things that I've done, decisions that I've made, and that's cool. That's, you know, anybody. I mean, come on. You know, I joke that I don't agree with myself 100% of the time, you know, but to alter the future like that, it just, I think you it's not wise, but I know you guys have the vote, so do what you gotta do.
All right, thank you very much, Mark. Well thought out. All right, I don't know that there's much more to cover here today, and we're also coming up on an hour, so I'm gonna move to leave this.
Just one thing that you
Yes,
said
sure.
before.
Yeah.
I was thinking here, these are people are getting complacent with, you know, the job and everything. I was the council member for 6 years. I disagreed with the supervisor and decided to run against him. I had to give up my seat as a councilman to challenge the supervisor, because you can't run for 2 positions at the same time. Okay, which I think is stupid. You can do it in other levels, but you can't do it here. Okay, you can be mayor and run for something, but you can't be councilman and run for something. It's kind of stupid, but I had to give it up. And I ran and I lost. It was probably the best thing that happened to me by losing. Because I was running against the supervisor with being a council member, so there's things I couldn't say about in the campaign. Okay?
Yeah.
But when I got out of office, now I could say what I wanted to say. And I ran a primary that year, ran against two other people in a primary, three Republicans, and I won as beat the incumbent and another person. And then got elected with about 70% of the vote when I ran the next time for supervisor. So you can get involved, but you have to stay involved. You just can't come to one meeting and express yourself and then not be seen for 6 months. Okay, I don't like to come to these meetings. This was something very personal that I thought was gonna damage the town. That's why I came to speak at this meeting for that reason. I think I've been to 3 town meetings in 14, since I left office.
Maybe two.
See you in the last.
But I don't like to get involved with that. I follow it. I know some of the stuff that's going on. But I don't come to meetings or get involved and question everything you guys do. I know you do your best you can. And I always said, like Mark said before, when you you can't please everybody all the time. And I said, the longer you served on the town board, the more people that start disliking you, the better you're doing your job. Because you can't please everybody all the time.
Love me.
No, I mean, you can't please everybody all the time. So you're gonna get people who used to like you until you went against them on something and voted against it.
John, we always liked you.
Well, I know a couple of people, I know a few people that when I became supervisor and voted certain ways, don't talk to me anymore. But I never went like, never went that. I never thought about anybody. I served with Eric Valentin for 10 years. And we disagreed probably more than we agreed. I still think he's a friend. And that's one thing part of life. It's another thing when you walk out of the room.
Didn't FDR say that, you want a friend in politics, get a dog? FDR said, if you want a friend in politics, get a dog.
Yeah, but it shouldn't be that way at the local level, man.
No, I agree.
It really should
agree.
not, you know.
Well,
I've had people, you know, tell the lies about me, this and that, and you find yourself in Hannaford getting dirty looks from me.
Yeah.
From residents, I can't avoid, you know, going to jobs in my town. I live here. You know, again, if you're Congress, who cares? You can hide out anywhere, man. You know, your district is ginormous and who cares what people say about you? You're getting 170 grand a year. You're getting, you know, your insider trading and life is good, you know, but I don't know, it's
They should all
different.
be so lucky. All right, with that, I'd like to move to leave this open. Second. All in favor? Very good. Motion to adjourn this meeting. Second. All in favor?